Hello, everybody. We are live, and welcome to GoIndieNow's live panel discussion show for the month of September. And today we are celebrating some interesting artists from a specific genre called the SciFan genre. And we have a very esteemed panel of folks who are part of the SciFan Society. They are celebrating their 1-year anniversary. We're super excited to help them celebrate. And they're going to be doing so with a little convention that we'll be talking about here in a little bit. A little mini get-together that is hopefully not so mini. But they've got a nice little gathering that they're going to be performing at live. And it's going to be an interesting, definitely convention. And we're very glad to have them here and talk about the genre that has been the best kept secret in literature for a very long time, and now it needs to be out there and talked about. And I think these folks have done a wonderful job of doing so, and you'd be surprised, as you'll find out tonight, how much the sci-fan genre has really influenced you and touched you, and you've been a part of. Because I was surprised when first talking to Richard, who will be here in a bit, about all of that, and it just was an interesting idea, and I think that the time has come for these guys to be out there and giving us everything that they got. So with that in mind, I'm going to introduce to you, I'm going to have the panel introduce themselves. My name is Joe Compton. I am the host, and I'm going to go ahead and start with ML. ML, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you've done?
Okay, hi, I'm ML Spencer, and I'm author of the Rinwar Saga. Rinwar Saga is considered sci-fan because the magic system is based on science, basically. I'm pretty more leaning toward the fantasy end of it, but definitely got the science in there too. So that's me. Hi.
Right on. All right, let's go ahead and talk to Brienne.
Hi.
Uh-oh, you cut out, Brienne.
Pending. And I just published my first book. It's a fantasy novel called Woven.
All right. Let's go ahead and talk to Patrick. Patrick, nobody can see Patrick. He's inconspicuous in the shadows with us today, but we couldn't have done this without him, so we brought him aboard. So, Mr. Hodge, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you put out there in the world so far?
Well, my name is Patrick Hodges, and I'm about to release the second book in my Wielders of Arantha trilogy. It is science fantasy, much like ML's book, sits mostly toward the fantasy, but you know all the fantasy and the magic stuff does have a scientific basis. So it's definitely a mixture of worlds. We got futuristic Earth and kind of a medieval society.
Awesome, very cool. And lastly, but never not least, the great Heidi Angel. Heidi, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody what you've been doing?
Hi, everybody. I am Heidi Angel, and I spent a lot of time on this channel, as you can tell, because I love Joe so much. I met Richard about a year ago when we were doing Brain to Books, and that's when I got introduced to science fantasy as well. I don't actually write science fantasy yet, as Richard likes to say, but I've learned that I really like to read it, and I have been helping out with planning the local SLC event because I am local to SLC as well. So I'm excited to talk about that later.
Very awesome, very awesome. And yes, we will talk about the convention. I wanted to kind of spend this time to give people an overview of SciFan and why it's not science fiction and it's not fantasy, and why it is SciFan. We've had plenty of, you can go back and look at a lot of what we've done with Richard being on Brain to Books. ML was on our panel on Brain to Books. And Richard's been on my show before talking about what SciFan is. So I don't want to kind of rehash that with, we'll just say that it's something that you know is there. And basically what I want to talk about first is why is it sci-fan and not science fiction and not fantasy? Why is there a crossover? And I stumped the panel right off the bat. Awesome.
I think we're all being extra polite and waiting for somebody else to go first.
Please don't be polite. Please talk.
I guess I'll jump in there. When I think of sci-fan, I mean, goodness, I think the first thing that actually comes to mind is probably Dune by Frank Herbert. Dune is an excellent example of science fantasy because, I mean, just upon first appearance, you might be tempted to label it sci-fi because there's spaceships and strange alien creatures, things like that. But then again, you've got this guy, Paul Atreides, who does basically magic. And so that kind of just takes all the sci-fi right out of it. So I think that that's a great example. Star Wars would be another one, which again has been kind of mislabeled science fiction for an awful long time, even though the Force is obviously, it's a magic system. All right, I'll let other people go.
One of the things that I found really interesting is I was introduced to steampunk about 4 or 5 years ago, and mostly in television, but that got me into reading steampunk. And I had no idea until I thought it was an anime thing. And then Richard was like, no, most of it, 99% of it, science fantasy. And I was like, you know, you're right. It kind of is. And then all of a sudden I started realizing all of these books that I had been enjoying, but having a hard time classifying when I was labeling them as a reviewer, it was because it was a blending of science fiction and fantasy, and it didn't fit more in one or more in the other. And I was just like, I was a fan of something and I didn't even know it. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, that's the first thing that really struck me when talking to Richard about what it is that there are so many offshoots. There are so many subgenres that belong within the categories of the sci-fan world, steampunk being one of them. What do you think, Brianne? What is your take on sci-fan?
I was going to add that I think it's really important to have the sci-fan genre because there is a definite crossover that has its own niche, and it's really important to give the reader what they're expecting. And I think that sometimes the crossover can be so strong that a reader who picks it up expecting pure science fiction or pure fantasy is going to be a little taken aback and maybe disappointed. So I think that labeling genres is super important, and getting really specific can really help the reader pick what they want to read.
What do you think, Patrick? What's your take on it? Oh, is he not there? Maybe we lost his voice just as the shadows overtook him. So when you're set out to write, is it a matter of you need to make that distinction that it is sci-fan, or is it something that you just kind of figure out as you go along, or as you look at when you're about to publish it, or is there a you specifically go after writing in the genre?
I'll jump in. I think it can be different for different writers. Sometimes you accidentally write something and you don't realize it. My very first book that I ever wrote started out as a science fiction, and it morphed into a fantasy and went back and forth for a while. And if I'd known at the time that SciFan existed, I probably would have tried to develop that along those lines a little bit more instead of giving up on the project, which is what I did. So I think at some point you do have to be really clear about what your genre is, or you'll kind of lose the project, or you'll lose your readers.
I guess I can jump in too. When I set out to write my series, I didn't even know what SciFan was, honestly. Now my day job is I am a science teacher. So pretty much naturally, anything I write, I'm going to want to ground it in some aspect of science, or at least have it make, rational sense. And I drew heavily from my science knowledge, and I didn't even know that I was writing something that could be considered sci-fan until I spoke with Richard. He's like, you're a SciFan writer. I'm like, oh no, I have like a new identity. So it was kind of a shock to me.
And to go with that from the perspective of a reader, I read a book, can't think of the name of it right now. I'll have to go through dig through Goodreads later, but I absolutely loved it because the entire book felt like a fantasy. There were little bits and pieces that were dropped very subtly that it was science fiction, but the whole thing felt like a fantasy. And then at the end, you realize that humanity has been taken back to almost a pre-world type of existence, and their magic is actually nanotechnology that the aliens put in these people, and it's clearly science fantasy. But when I read it, I'd never heard of that, and so I said, oh, I love it because it's this beautiful blending of science fiction and fantasy. And then I went and read other reviews, and there were a lot of readers who were really upset because they bought the book thinking it was science fiction, because that's what the label was, but it was more heavily fantasy elemented until that very last section. And then there were a lot of people who, when that big reveal came out, got really angry because they thought they were reading a fantasy. And I was just so excited because I usually figure stuff out long before I ever get to the end. And this guy totally surprised me. And so when you can surprise me, but it still makes sense, I get really excited. So I was meant to read this genre.
Nice. Very nice. That's awesome. And it's great to have that perspective. I think a lot of the authors that we have here are really grateful for that perspective. We've already mentioned him probably 5 times within this conversation, and here he goes. He pops right up. His ears must have been burning, and here he is, everybody. Mr. Richard Mulder. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody so they can get an idea who you are and tell everybody what you've done.
Is my microphone on? I'm not certain.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Well, great to meet you all here. Thank you for coming. This is I'm really glad that Joe put this together. This has been really exciting. For the past year, September 29th, 2016 was the day that I wrote a blog post about science fantasy. And in that blog post, I talked about my story and how frustrated I was that similar to what Heidi was just talking about, that I had this story and it was fantasy fiction at the same time, and I couldn't quite put the right genre. I couldn't tag it, and it was driving me crazy. And one day I was doing some research while I was in my marketing class and realized, oh, there already is a genre, and I wasn't aware of it. It's called science fantasy. It's been around since the 1950s. In fact, Star Wars was originally labeled science fantasy, and technically it still is. Argumentatively, it is the definition of science fantasy. And the science fantasy is a blend between both science fiction and fantasy, to the extent that you can use magic inside scientific type worlds. You can have technology inside a fantasy world, a different world, a different how do you put it? I'll talk about mine a little bit so you can kind of get an idea. So I wrote Conquest, and it's very different. Heidi's read it, and she enjoyed it. So Conquest, it starts off with the concept of, we're here in this world. It's modern. We've got the NSA. We've got all these gadgets, gizmos. There's more specifically, the biggest part of it is this technology called gamma frequency radio technology, so GFID. And it's very similar to RFID except that the Centers for Disease and Control have been infiltrated by the NSA, and this nanobot has been infiltrated into all these vaccines. And so everyone in the world is now being tracked by these GFIDs, and they don't know it. And there's a higher purpose for these nanobites. And that higher purpose is revealed near the end of the book. But ultimately, in the background, you've got this Mongol from 500 years or 700 years ago, excuse me. He's still alive, and he has this this commission to, well, technically has a commission to protect the Earth. He's not doing that. He's death, so to speak. He's of the four horsemen. He's death, and it takes a very interesting twist. Another world is the world of Zion. He can travel between both worlds, and ultimately his goal is to feed his master. His master is the Leviathan. It's a dark force, an entity that has completely consumed the other world, Zion. So it's not the type of world you would think of when you hear Zion. Zion, oh, it's this wonderful place. No, it's corrupt, it's evil, it's completely barren wasteland that the Leviathan has consumed. It used to be great. It used to be wonderful, but then he took over, and now he wants to consume Earth as well. So ultimately, the part of the science fantasy that comes into play is that gamma ray technology is actually an ancient magic that transports people between both worlds.
Nice, very cool.
So that's my story. So back in January, well, technically in December, I met Dane Edmondson. He had produced 2 magazines in the past, and one of the magazines, Beyond Science Fiction, he got together with me, and at the time I had just barely created the Science Fantasy Society. We had brought on board quite a number of authors at the time. M.L. Spencer, you were one of our originals. And together we've forged this alliance of authors. Now we're nearing over 800 authors. And September 29th marks our anniversary. In January, we began Dana and I against SciFan magazine. And this debuts a lot of science fantasy, science fiction, and fantasy, all within the same anthology, month after month. This is a monthly anthology right now. In fact, this guy right here, this is our 9th edition. It is on Amazon as the #1 new release in fantasy anthologies, and has been for over a week. It's been exciting.
That is awesome, Richard.
It's very awesome. Yeah, and that just goes to show you what you all have worked so hard to build and brought forth to light, and it's very admirable. Getting towards the debate of whether something is SciFan or if it's science fiction or fantasy. I mean, that is obviously going to be something that is going to help your cause, because you're going to defend SciFan, and other people are going to talk that this is fantasy. And I had a question from the audience along those lines, and they wanted to know if this is from Mr. J.B. Taylor, and he asked if it takes place off-world with alien life forms, but clearly evolved around magic, can it ever be considered just fantasy, or does it have to be the blend? I mean, we all agree you can label anything you want, right? I mean, it doesn't. You don't have to make it. It's the law. It's not law that it's SciFan, but that's what we're talking about here, right? That's the thin lines that make it SciFan versus making it science fiction or purely fantasy.
So there's actually several levels of science fantasy that it's kind of interesting. Back in the early 1950s, when it first came out, when it was first coined, there was a lot of controversy about it. There was a lot of sides, different factions. You've got hard science fiction, you've got hard fantasy, you've got dark fantasy, you've got this, that, and the other, different types of science fiction and different types of fantasy. And so science fantasy was laughingly mocked as the bastard child, excuse my language, the bastard child of science fiction and fantasy. And for a long time, everyone wanted to avoid it. And that in this generation, and the generations to come, people are starting to realize how much, and I've seen it too, how much science fantasy is already existing here inside our media. A big, very big one, Avatar. There's no way around it. It is classic science fantasy just as much as Star Wars is science fantasy. And so, referring back to that question, if so, let me understand it correctly. You've got, oh hey, Patrick's here. Hey, Patrick's our editor for Sci-Fi magazine. Great to have him here. So anyway, to answer that question, Star Wars is science fantasy. And so, referring back to that question, you what? If
Patrick, you need to mute the YouTube channel there.
Oh, hey, Patrick's our editor. Oh no, you're fine. You're fine, Patrick. Great to have you here. So
yeah, made it back.
All right, we got a lot of people back. So anyway, regarding that question, if you want to come with us with the science fantasy, this movement that we've built, you're fully welcome. You can come on board with us. Now, the whether or not to specifically label it as science fantasy, it sounds like you're almost concerned to label it science fantasy. I'd say, go ahead. Come with us. We're here, and we're doing everything we can to push the edge, push the breakout science fantasy into the mainstream media. Now, there's a lot of things that are underway right now I can't really talk about, but during our release on September 29th, we've got a big SciFan Con that we prepared, and during SciFan Con, I'm going to be making some announcements that are going to be quite exciting for a lot of people, and even controversial to an extent. And it's going to be quite. I wish I could say more. Honestly, it's going to be quite an interesting set of events. That
way to go, man! Way to tease and torture my audience. I really appreciate that, Richard.
Yep, you're welcome.
Anybody else want to talk about? Is there a hard line, or is it something that you all struggle with too when you're thinking about writing? Do you feel like you need to label it a certain way, or?
I want to comment on that. I just wanted to say that I kind of go back to my last comment in that if you're going to be a professional author, then you need to think about what your fans want. If you want to keep that awesome hybridized sci-fan, then do it and go all into it. But otherwise, think about what your audience is going to expect and what they're going to want. And if you're going to keep your book the way it is, and with those alien life forms, and it feels very heavy into that science fiction genre, but there's this magic, then I think you should go into sci-fan, because then your reader will know what to expect as soon as they pick up your book, and they will be excited and thrilled to read what unique world and what unique magic systems that you've created. Whereas if you kind of label one or the other, you might end up again with that disappointment. So,
and I think the key when writers, and this is coming from a reader's perspective because I'm not brave enough to write it, but one of the keys that has taken it from being, as Richard said, a bastardization to being mainstream is that early on, it was the lazy way. It was basically they were writing soft science fantasy or science fiction, and they were using magic to explain things that were just, they didn't want to take the time to explain it. And that's why it got labeled that way. But there have been some amazing people that have done amazing work. So I think the important thing is, if you're doing it, don't use magic as a cop-out. Follow the rules of magic just like you would writing good fantasy. And as long as you follow those rules and you have that clearly established reason why it is the way that it is, then absolutely go for that science fantasy label. But don't go sci-fan because you're too lazy to do the math and figure out how this works without just saying, oh, it's magic.
Very well said.
All right. So that being said, so we have, let's say we're going to define ourselves as sci-fan. Now, a question came up again in the chat talking about, is there a chemistry formula to this? Does it need to be 50% science fiction? Does it need to be 50% fantasy? Can it be 90% fantasy, 10% science fiction? And just because it's that 10% that makes it sci-fan? Or is there a happy medium? How do you guys evaluate that? I mean, obviously something can't be perfectly 50-50, right? So
I can tackle that question if you'd like.
yeah, please.
All right. Now, there are 3 levels of science fantasy. Soft science fantasy, standard science fantasy, and enlightened science fantasy. Now, soft science fantasy, that's basically, it's kind of like what you're talking about. You've got a little bit of elements of technology, a little bit of magic. They don't really relate to each other. They just happen to be in the same story. That's a soft science fantasy. Standard science fantasy, the level of standard is Star Wars. So you've got the Force. The Force is a type of magic. There's really no other way to explain it. The Force is magic. Okay. Then you've got all your starships, you got your fleets, you've got your lightsabers, and you've got the characters are using the Force to push each other and while they're fighting, and they're very active. And this is the standard science fantasy that had evolved back in the early 1950s and continued on until George Lucas came along and brought in Star Wars. Star Wars wasn't originally popular. It really wasn't. It took a while before it caught on, and now it's so huge that Disney paid millions and millions of dollars to buy the rights from Lucasfilms. And so that's your level of standard. In fact, the Avatar would also fall into standard. Enlightened science fantasy is new, as a brand new type of the genre, level of genre that has evolved primarily over the past year. It's an idea that, in fact, Lander Allen, he's one of the authors that helped me. He helped me come out of my shell. There was a point in time where I wrote my first story and I wrote my first novel and published it in 2003. And it was exciting, the endeavor writing it and getting there, and then ultimately it was on the bookshelf. I went with a vanity publisher, which was my first mistake. But after a year, they came back to me. They're like, "All right, to keep it back on the shelves," I made a total of $14, and I was really disappointed. But keep it on the shelves, you need to pay us $500 a year. I'm like, what? So my dream kind of died at that point. I kept writing in the background, and it wasn't until a year ago, just over a year ago, when I published Conquest, that I'd been writing over the course of 7 years, that I came out of my shell, and Lander helped me do that over the course of about 2 years. He was working with me. And so, talking about Lander, he should be with us. I'm not certain if he's in here right now, but Lander, he's written a story called The Keystone Islands, and that's the series name. And the first book talks about how he molds a magical entity. He molds it's matter that he's able to pull technology. So you've got a gun, and it's got portals in it where you can flip a button and send well, in fact, one of them, there's a console where you can hit a button and through a portal send a virus into a person's body through this portal, and it causes them to turn into these monsters called tetrapaths. And it's quite an amazing story. And what he does is he successfully takes magic and science fiction and molds it together to the point where it enlightens each other, meaning that one escalates the other. The magic helps influence the technology, or vice versa. The technology helps influence the magic. So rather than just randomly being there in the same story, which some people have described, there was a video game out a little while ago. It was a I can't remember which one it was. It was some fantasy video game, and out of nowhere, this car drives through, and you're like, what? That's that's the level of soft science fantasy that we're trying to get away from. Enlightened science fantasy is where we want to be. Enlightened, like Lander Allen has put together, he has the technology enhances the magic. It makes it more powerful.
Awesome. I was just mentioning in the chat, Richard, that you're so talented. You managed to answer all 3 chat questions with 1 answer.
Whoops.
You did. Seriously. Somebody brought up the fact that somebody asked me if Star Wars was something that you would consider sci-fi, and you answered it within the question that I asked. So, which was perfect. That worked out well. Anybody else want to add to that?
Well, when I was writing Wielders, I really wasn't thinking about this, the whole genre thing. I had a story in my head that just happened to have both elements in it. I wasn't sure where it would fall on the science fantasy, but yeah, I'm glad to be part of this much larger society now, and I hope that one day that my books will stack up against some of the great ones that Heidi mentioned, but only time will tell.
Well, since Patrick kind of led us that way, one of my questions to all of you before we'll talk about the convention here right after this, but my question to all of you is, what has SciFan given to you? What has this society done for you as a writer, as a person? Is there something that you can attribute to being a part of this society?
I'm going to start. Is that cool?
Go ahead.
Friends. That's the biggest thing that science fantasy has contributed for me. Friends. Everyone who has joined the Science Fantasy Society, I consider every single one of them my friends. And I'm not sure what I would do without you guys.
Right back at
Thank
you.
Ladies, do you want to add on?
As a reader of the genre, my book list got huge. I have a ton of books. I put out a call at the beginning of the summer to the SciFan group, and I got like 30 books that were sent in by members of the group, and my kids are reading through them like crazy. One of my boys just finished the selection, and I'm like, would you please write the review so that I can read it now? Because I'm having to wait for them to finish reading. They won't let me have the books. So I'm excited.
Jason's awesome.
I'm pretty new to the SciFan community. I just kind of got introduced to Richard about a month or so ago. And I was kind of going to say the same thing as Richard, because I've been meeting a lot of people and making new connections and finding a lot of great stuff to read. So it's really awesome to be here, and I'm really excited to be part of it.
And I guess I'll say something. I really, really appreciate also, just like Richard, all the people that I've met through SciFan Society. Just so many wonderful, talented people that are really there for each other, and they're just not out for themselves. And I found it a really a good, very supportive, wholesome group. And so I just was all over that. So thank you, Richard, for putting that together. I mean, you guys are just phenomenal.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to Tom Falwell, because it's him who introduced me to Richard and says, hey, there's this new magazine. It's called SciFan Magazine. Oh, really? Oh, well, hi, Richard. Oh, hi. And then a month later, hey, you want to do our editing? Oh, that'd be great. And I've been doing it ever since. And this, hopefully it becomes a juggernaut.
Nice. Very nice.
That's so awesome. He volunteers his time. Just like a lot of us here at SciFan, and he's been amazing.
I also think we should give a shout out to Mr. Dane Edmondson, who isn't here with us, but he is a big part of what has made this successful. I'm sure Richard would agree with that. And you know, wow, and Richard just dropped out, so maybe I offended him. I don't know.
We've been having weird stuff going on with our internet here. I'm sure he'll be back.
No worries. Yeah. But so, you know, he was probably one of the guys that I wanted to really talk about the convention. But Heidi, you know a lot about it as well. So why don't we talk about what SciFan Society is doing that is coming up here at the end of September?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm getting feedback. Sorry. So they are doing an online convention with a real world component, which I thought was really cool. So on their website, which I don't have handy at the moment, but they have this big convention that they've been doing all month online, and has represented their members all across the country. And then it's all going to culminate on the 29th. We are doing a 22 author event at Smith's Marketplace, right outside of Salt Lake City. And the event starts at 6:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and it will all be broadcasted live to the SciFan Facebook page. So everybody around the country can be there and experience it, which I think is absolutely awesome. And I believe their goal is to make this a regular thing. And hopefully next year they'll have several places where they're doing real live events that are all being fed into the online community as well. So we can build on that camaraderie and connection. And I'm really excited to be a part of it.
Nice. So we were just talking about the convention, Richard, and what it entails. Why don't you give us some details?
Sure. Okay. So Nicole Luttrell, she's one of our science fantasy authors, and she's been a huge help. She's also an admin over at Science Fantasy Society. So if for anyone who's listening who doesn't know what Science Fantasy Society is, it's a group. It's a Facebook group. So go to at www.facebook.com/SciFan Society is the tag, and come join us. But point being, so what's going to happen is on the 29th of September, in light of our anniversary, the 1 year from the day that I posted that blog post and created basically this community, I believe she has it starting at 1:30. Don't quote me on that. She's she's in charge of that segment. But early in the afternoon on Friday, the 29th, she's going to begin a series of half-hour author takeovers, and several different authors, including some of them here, will be taking over the entire group of Science Fantasy Society. We will be shutting down all posts during that day, and during the time period, and for half-hour segments, each author will have a chance to, they can go live if they want to, they don't have to. They'll be putting up their own posts, they'll be talking about their books, what they do, what they write, stuff about them, their bios, and an opportunity to showcase their work. That leads up to Standard Time. So in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, I am hosting a live convention. So it's an author night. We have 23 authors in attendance currently. In fact, a few of them, Lander Allen is coming, and we've got Brianne. Brianne's coming as well. So we're excited to meet you guys in person. That'll be great. We'll have a series of booths. Our host, Bruce Butcher, he's kind of a local celebrity. He's a manager over at Smith's Marketplace out in way West Jordan. It's so just a heads up, everyone. You got a little ways to drive. But he is very famous. He'll make one post about some type of giveaway, and he's got 500 comments. He has so many friends on Facebook that you can't friend request him anymore. Facebook won't let him. So he's our host, the co-host basically. I'm the co-host with him, and he's going to be providing a lot of free refreshments. You're going to have the opportunity to check out all the different booths with the authors, and I myself and Lander, we were going to be tag teaming. We're going to go through. We're going to do a 5-minute interview with each author. So Brienne, be prepared for that. I'll send you a list of questions, so don't worry. We're going to go through and we're going to interview each one for about 5 minutes, and that interview will be streamed live on the Facebook group Science Fantasy Society, so that everyone can participate. Everyone in the world who is part of Science Fantasy Society will get a chance to see our local convention. The goal here is, so this one is it's a free convention. Anyone can come. I'll have Joe post the flyer and the location. If any of you happen to be in Utah or want to travel out here, hey, we'll welcome you. It's 1 week right after that Salt Lake Comic-Con. So if you want to stay for a week, check out Salt Lake City in the meantime, and then on Friday, come join us. That will be really fun. So anyway, when that'll run until 8:30 Mountain Standard Time. We'll have a lot of authors. We have several giveaways, and in fact, the night before, if you follow Bruce, if you look for the Facebook group Bruce at Smiths, look that up. Check out a lot of coupons, a lot of different things that he's giving away. He's giving away a laptop a day for the past couple of days. He's got 2 more days, so if you want to get on board with that, that'll be fun. He'll be posting a book giveaway, our books, a big collection of our books on Thursday night. For those who win the books, come pick them up. You can meet us, sign them for you. On top of that, you can check out all the other books as well, and we'll have our own little giveaways. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and there's food.
Awesome. I just added the group address to the description box. It's at the very, very top. You may have to, if you're watching this live right now, you may have to refresh to get it. But if you do that, you'll see the group, and then you can join the Facebook group from there. So I just already added that.
We also have the event. Inside Science Fantasy Society, if you look up events, it's on. If you go to Science Fantasy Society, right below the banner, you'll see SciFan Magazine, a little link there. Click on SciFan Magazine and then look at our events. It's our event coming up in the next 2 weeks. It's got the address. It's got everything they need right there.
Nice. I'll post the poster as well. No problem. So Brienne, you're attending then, huh?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really excited.
So
I live just up the road in Ogden, so I'll be making the long drive down there.
And I know Heidi will be there as well, correct, Heidi?
Yep. They welcomed me because urban fantasy is close enough to sci-fi.
Heidi's going to be there. Sorry.
I think they're trying to convert us fantasy writers.
Yeah, because when I originally said, so I write urban fantasy because I'm not brave enough to write real fantasy. I tell people that all the time. And so when I use that excuse with Richard, he's like, oh, we'll take urban fantasy. Also, you just don't write science fantasy yet. I was like, right, yet. I don't write it.
We'll convert you. This is a religion now? No, just kidding.
Can I send you a few copies of my book for this event?
I was going to say something. Lost it. I'm going to say something to Heidi. I lost it. Oh well.
Well, if it comes back, let me know.
Yes. Patrick, send your books. Because we will have, we're going to have tables for books for sale. I've put it out there to several of my author friends. If they want to send me their books, I'll put them on my table and I'll send you what I make from it. You betcha.
Okay, wonderful.
I don't just do this event. I'm actually in the process of negotiating an October 14th event, thanks to Joe. And so I will have books at that event too. It'll be through the library systems. I'm still trying to negotiate time and place.
When exactly is this event?
It'll be on Saturday, October 14th, because that's Indie Pride Day.
I mean, this event, the one we're all talking about?
No. This one is September 29th. Sorry.
Oh, I better get my in the mail then.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I was going to say about the event this coming in 2 weeks from now on the 29th, this was the thing I forgot. It's not just science fiction. Those are the only authors there. We've got science fantasy, we got science fiction, we got fantasy, we got children's books, we've got the whole purpose of society is not to be exclusive. It's to be an open community. In fact, SciFan Magazine, we recently expanded to include not just science fantasy, but science fiction and fantasy stories as well. We did that in mind that we have a larger audience than we anticipated. And so anyway, point being, we have self-help books. We've got tons of different types of authors. It's not just science fantasy.
Yeah, I'm in the group. I have not written one word of fantasy or science fiction in my entire life. So, but I'm in the group because I know Richard. We've spoken, but yeah, and I love supporting you guys anyway. But but you can come and join them. I think this is something that I was actually just typing about, and because it's been mentioned. I think a lot of people don't want to label themselves. They don't want to put themselves as I'm a sci-fan author or I'm a fantasy author, I'm a science fiction author. And to one of the commenters' points, I don't know if he would like me to tell him his name, but write what you want. You don't have to be labeled just to write sci-fan. You don't have to say that you write sci-fan. But what the one thing about this is this is a community. This is a community of authors who support one another, who engage with one another, who give great advice, because there's all kinds of level of experience in this group. There's all kinds of different ideas, and there is it's just a great group to chat with and experience and gain knowledge from. And somewhere down the road, we all, maybe we're not writing that now, or maybe we don't want to be labeled as sci-fan or fantasy authors or science fiction authors, but we're writing something that may need that expertise. And this is where this group may come in handy. There's a whole thing going on, and it's kind of tongue in cheek. They're talking about dragons and whether you can have science dragons or fantasy dragons in the chat right now. But the funny thing is that is something that you could bring up if you were really serious and you were really thinking about, well, what kind of dragon am I going to write about? And am I doing something, if it is a science dragon, is there something that I can do to make it more of a science dragon? And that's something that this group can offer you. I see questions all the time posted, just general questions about writing. And the the SciFan group is very adamant to talk to you. And then nobody is ever shunned or turned away from this group. And I think that's what's really important to note. We are celebrating SciFan. We are celebrating these authors because they are very worthy to be celebrated. And we are celebrating them coming together as a group. And there is something to be said for that as well. But would you guys all agree that that's one thing that this community that this has done for you? It's great giving you guys a community and to share your ideas and to test things off of one another, not just based on science fan or sci-fan.
And I want to throw something out too. On September the 29th, if you're anywhere around the Southern California area, DM me. Come hang out here at my place. We can have our own little thing together. It'll be fun.
Yeah, Melinda and I were talking about a little while ago. She'd like to have her own little get together, kind of a party. So anyone out there, that'd be fun. You should go.
That's right. I'll bring food.
Pizza? Oh wait, I'm busy.
Best way to make anybody over, food.
But am I right? I mean, and I appreciate that, ML. But would you guys say that that's something that's really comforting for you guys? Is that you know that you have this society, this group that you can go to, even if you have a generalized question?
For me, absolutely. I am a newly published author, and but running into this group almost by chance right at the beginning, it feels like such a huge comfort to me. I feel like I've got a lot of experienced writers to help me out and to draw from, and like I already have friends here in the industry, and I don't feel quite so alone drifting out on my own with my one little book over here. So
Well,
it
congratulations.
feels great as an author.
Congratulations.
We're a big family.
And I don't know if ML wants to give out her address so that everybody can come to her house on the 29th, but I'll post that in the I'll post that in the chat as well. No, just kidding.
Give me a DM and I'll give you the address. No problem.
There you go. Yeah, I have to agree. I have had, 4 or 5 different events that I've done. And I always get a ton of support from the SciFan people, even though none of the events have been specifically science fantasy. But there's enough crossover with urban fantasy and science fiction and paranormal romance with the readerships that we can share those readerships and it's not a problem. And they recognize that, and they're not like, oh, I can't give my books away at your event because those aren't my type of people, which I've heard, maybe not quite in that snobby a voice, from other authors that are in the same genre as me. So to have the people in the SciFan community support those events and those activities, even though it's not an exact fit for their stuff, is really awesome, because there's nothing worse than having an event and then having people not show up and it just be crickets.
Yes, you guys show me a lot of love, and I can't thank you enough for all of that. I appreciate all of that for sure. Richard, let me ask you this question.
Yes.
As we talk about this community, it is now a year old. How has it changed from your initial conception, and from what have you been happily surprised by?
Honestly, there's so much. I don't know where to begin. I actually met Dane in an interesting way. Dane Edmondson, my co-producer, he's a really, really good, very down-to-earth guy. And one of the things that really touched me was at the time, so back in December, my wife was pregnant. And I don't know if there's quite a number of you who know more details, but she has hyperemesis gravidarum, and it's this exact same type of pregnancy that Kate Middleton has, Duchess of England, and it's debilitating. My wife had, during the course of the pregnancy, she had 103 IV placements the entire period, and several hospital visits. It was terrifying. There were several times I thought I was going to lose her, and at the beginning, I got to a point where I'm a very proud kind of person, meaning I don't like to ask for help. And one of the things that stuck out, GoFundMe, and I was kind of ashamed of it at first, because I'm not the type of person who asks for help, not the person who asks for money. And Dane reached out with a very generous donation and said, hey, I'm here for you. I'm a friend. I can, whatever you need, just let me know. And so many people, they offered clothes and you name it. There were so many things that baby clothes when the baby came, and it was profound. It was amazing, and it just kind of it made me cry. And it was right after that Dane explained his former magazine and how he's like, you know what? About a year ago, I finished off my magazine, the Beyond Science Fantasy, or sorry, Beyond Science Fiction, and I really want to start it up again. And I'd like to reach out to you because I know you own the trademark for SciFan, which I had a whole different course. I was thinking I was going to go, my series was going to be, the SciFan universe and all this stuff, and didn't really know what I was going to do with it yet. I just knew it was important. And he reached out to me. He said, I want to rebrand it as SciFan Magazine. What do you think? And I'm like, that sounds cool. Yeah, let's do it. And now we're 9 issues in. Technically, if you can count in, there were 2 lit RPG issues that we put out there. They weren't as successful as I thought they were going to be, so we took them down. But so 9 issues in of SciFan Magazine, and finally, we had numbers of. So in January, we were so excited. We released our first issue. It was soaring on the charts. We were an Amazon bestseller. We were getting thousands and thousands of Kindle page reads every day. And then the Amazon Warhammer came down. Apparently, our magazine, our first issue, was subject to a bot scam. We had no idea, and we were shut down. The entire account was shut down. Amazon, we were kicked out of Amazon. Our books were taken out. Everything that we had worked so hard to accomplish was just stripped from us. It was gone in one instant. I blogged about it. I was so frustrated. I was so upset, and I met Adam Dries. Adam Dries is another science fantasy author, and he's out in Canada, and he's very, very popular. He's an Amazon bestseller himself, and his entire series was removed as well. He was also subject to the same bot scam at the same time period.
Yeah, you guys there were like 150 authors that got hit, and a lot of them were science fiction and fantasy.
Yep. And so that experience was humbling. We reached out to Amazon. We talked to them. We explained the situation. Ultimately, they decided to reinstate us, and we came back with a blast. In fact, our second issue, we featured M.L. Spencer here as our featured author. We had her cover featured on it, and we've since strayed away from the featuring the covers. We got a lot of feedback from our readers that they would prefer a more professional design, and so that's we went through and changed everything, and sales have been tremendous, especially with this 9th issue. I'm still floored. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit nervous at the same time, simply because of our experience in January, how successful we were, excited. We were, oh my gosh, Amazon bestseller. And then the kibosh came down. So we've been running strong for a week. And in fact, the algorithms look very different. It looks very legitimate. They look, we have actual sales rather than just Kindle page reads. And it's exciting. Still, I'm going to be honest, still nervous, but I'm 99.9% confident there's no issue here. And I'm happy, so happy that we've come this far. This community has reached a point where nothing is going to stop us. If Amazon were for any reason going to shut us down again, who knows, we'll go wide. Not worried about it. We have a huge community supporting us, and this is a huge thank you to all of you. Thank you.
I'm literally editing issue number 10 as we're talking.
Yes, he is.
And I remember that day. I remember all about that. I remember talking to you about that, and I remember, all that you described and how distraught you were, but you maintained it, you stayed with it, and I think everybody here is very happy that you did. I see great things for you guys. You guys had great growth in 1 year, and that's pretty impressive. And you guys were a big part of the Brain the Books convention, and that was a real fun time with all of you. And I think moving forward, let's go down the list. Let's start with you, Brianna. What are you working on for anniversary number 2?
I'm working on a sequel to my book Woven that should come out next year, and also a Peter Pan retelling / sequel. Way excited about both of them. I don't know if I'll get converted over to the SciFan quite yet, but we'll see.
How about you, Emma? What are you working on? I know you.
Well, right now I'm trying to wrap up my entire series. I'm working on book 4 of the Rinmore Saga, and it's giving me a little bit of a hassle because I had originally planned to have a book 4 and a book 5, but I decided no. I'm actually going to cut some stuff out and just throw it all together and finish it off. So right now I'm wrestling that ugly monster to the ground. After that, I really don't have any plans, so we'll see where I go from there.
I'm in the middle of reading book 1, and it is amazing.
Oh,
She is an awesome author. I'm so serious.
Oh, thank you, Richard. You're pretty
Really?
awesome yourself.
Thanks.
Sorry about that. How about you, Heidi? What are you working on? I know you're not SciFan, but you've just joined this group, so I'm sure you're going to be helping them do some stuff. But what do you got going on? I know you just mentioned October 14th, so tell everybody what you're up to.
I've got a lot going on. So yeah, I have an event in October that I'm working on for any indie authors in the Salt Lake City area are welcome to attend it. And like me on Facebook and become my friend so that we can connect on that. Or you can email me from my website. I just got an email from a gal on YouTube, and she's like, "You're in Salt Lake City? I am too. Oh my gosh." It's amazing how many authors there are in Salt Lake City, and most of us don't know each other. So, and then I'm doing another event.
I need to get you added to a group. There's hundreds. I'll get you added, Heidi.
That would be awesome, because I only moved here 5 years ago, but some of these people have been here.
I think it's either closed or secret group, but yeah, there's a ton of bestsellers here that I'll get you connected with. Yeah,
that would be awesome, because I know I keep running into authors and they're like, "You're in Salt Lake City too," and I'm like, "Yes, where have you been? Where have I been? I don't know," but I'm really excited to
I'll
do
get
more.
You added too. Don't worry.
And then I also have a serialized piece that the first book should be releasing in October. It's novella. I shouldn't say book. That makes it sound so special. But no, it's the Survivalist Bible. I've been working on it for a while, and it was supposed to be a standalone book, but apparently I'm addicted to series. Ending up in the same situation I'm in with these lovely series where I have the first 1 or 2 books out and don't know when the next ones are coming out. I just wrote all of the Survivalist Bibles. So I couldn't decide how to break it into separate books because it didn't fall neatly. So what I'm doing is I'm releasing sections. And so the first one is the Survivalist Bible Genesis, and that'll be out in October. And then the next section is Exodus, and it will be out in November, and so on and so forth. And then once I've released all of the sections, they're usually about 17 to 20,000 words. At the end, I'm going to release a giant paperback, and I do mean giant because it's upwards of 140,000 words right now. So that's my project for the next probably year.
Awesome. How about you, Patrick? What do you got going on other than editing the latest issue?
I released book 1 of my Wielders of Arantha series, Pawns, in April, which I hope you will all read, especially you, Richard. Book 2, shameless plug alert, is due to debut 1 week from today. It's on pre-order now. It's called Queens. Yeah, chess terms, you see. I just started writing book 3, which is called Endgame, and I hope to have that out in early 2018. Additionally, as Richard knows, I have like a serialized prequel novella running in SciFan magazine a little bit at a time for the last few months. I hope to wrap that up by the end of the year and maybe compile it and release it as its own book sometime in 2018 when this rest of the series is all out. After that, I already have a plan for my next series, which is going to be paranormal urban fantasy, and can't wait to get started on that too.
And Patrick also offers his services through SciFanMagazine.com. If you are an author and you need editing services, he is very affordable. And so just check it out. Go to SciFanMagazine.com and then click on our services link, and you can take a look at that there.
Yeah. Line editing, not content editing.
Correct. Yep.
Awesome. What are you working on, Richard? I know that you always got some fires out there.
Well, don't you want to know? Well, I'm excited to announce that my narrator, Andrea Ems, she is a best-selling narrator. In fact, she is the narrator of Little Women. She is releasing my novel on Audible very soon. She just finished recording last week. She's just sent it off to to her engineer to get it all parsed together and put together. And so I'm on my toes. I don't know exactly when it's going to be ready. I'm going to be able to listen and prove the final piece probably in about a week, and then it's up for Audible to determine when it releases. So very excited for that to come out.
Oh, I just realized I just hired a narrator to do Pawns in audio. I hope to have that out by the end of the year.
There you go.
And I just hired a narrator to do Darkstorm, so
Here we go.
Narration is awesome. Anyway, so I've got that running. I also I'm about to release Conquest Inside so this is a secret. Nobody knows this yet. Spoiler. I'm going to release Conquest Inside a large box set with several other authors, like-minded authors that I'm very excited to be working with. A few of them are bestsellers, and that's there. We've got a series. We have at least 2 box sets. One of them should be very soon, probably in the next month or two. The next one, I'm hoping to include Book 2, War, inside that. If not, it'll be my novella that's Augmented Insomnia. And that one's going to be huge. And that's part of the big announcement that'll be coming on the 29th. So, like I said, spoiler alert, there's some big things coming around the corner.
See, I knew we'd get it out of you sooner or later.
That's only one tiny piece of it. You have no idea.
Hey, you had to give me something for this show.
Yes.
So I appreciate any little nugget that I get for that. That's awesome. Right. So, we're 1 year into the SciFan Society, 9 issues into working on to the 10th into the SciFan magazine. You guys have grown exponentially very fast. The Facebook group gets bigger and bigger every day. So is there anything you want to say to people out there who are considering being a member of the SciFan Society, Richard, that we haven't covered yet?
You don't have to write science fantasy to be part of our group. The entire purpose of Science Fantasy Society is to be an all-inclusive, every type of author supportive group. And that's, in fact, the magazine is evolving with that as well. We have so that blog post that I made has converted into the SciFan magazine website. And the website now hosts, last month we had 29,000 views. This month we're at 24,000 and counting. We are very excited that we've got such a huge audience looking at our blog now, and so one of the featured one of the items that we make available. So let me back up a little bit. So last month, my co-producer Dane Edmondson reached out to the community and explained that yes, we look big, but we're not. We're just 2 indie authors with our 8. We've got or excuse me, 6. We've got 6 volunteer board review members, and the entire community all supporting each other for free. That's what we do. And the purpose of the magazine is to turn around and remarket each other. And so we reached out for donations simply because we were floundering and we were considering shutting down the magazine last month. And to see the huge turnaround from not getting any sales and kind of, struggling there and trying to decide, okay, well, should we, because we pay for our submissions, we pay $4 per 1,000 words. And we've gotten to a point where we're like, okay, we've been in the red since day one. We were really hopeful that we could get off the ground, and it's just still not there. To today, it's just mind-boggling what has happened over the past month. And this is a huge thank you to all of you who contributed donations, who contributed shares and posts, and just talking about, hey, this is a small magazine. They want to be big. They need your help, and our entire purpose. So one of the things that we are now featuring on the website, now that it's so huge and popular, is author spotlights. Now we asked for it's a $5 fee, more technically more like a donation, because simply we need to be able to pay our authors. $5 gives you a author spotlight on our website, and we post that. We've done several for free over the past couple of months, and to kind of promote it. And now going forward, this is a service that we're offering in order to help maintain and to help offset our costs. And a lot of people, especially quite a few of these authors who originally were featured in as a author spotlight, have now come over and converted over to our Science Fantasy Society, our community, and have also submitted to the magazine their own stories. And it's exciting to see the growth that we've had.
Awesome. Very awesome. Well, I think we've covered all that we can cover about the SciFan community. I want to thank everybody for joining us. We'll go down the line real quick and everybody give out their links and tell everybody where they can find you personally. I'll go ahead and start to my farthest left, which would be Brianne. Brianne.
Awesome. Thanks for having me here tonight on this panel. It was a lot of fun to be here and talk about SciFan. You can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/authorbriemore. Also, my website's pretty easy, authorbriemore.com. And you can subscribe to my newsletter to find out when the sequel to Woven's coming out. I'm really excited about that. So, yeah, thanks again for having me.
Thank you for joining us. That was awesome. You did great. I really appreciate it. I will speak for ML. ML Spencer dropped out, and you can find ML Spencer at mlspencerfiction.com. I believe that's the right website, if I'm not correct here. Let me make sure. Yep, mlspencerfiction.com. And she's got all her social media links there on her website. It's a very cool website. Go check it out, definitely. And check out her books, because Patrick attested to this earlier. She's a fantastic author and somebody who she was featured on SciFan magazine episode, or issue 2.
Also issue, not just issue 2, but issue 7 as well.
There you go. See, so you can get a really good taste of her awesomeness for sure. And I thank her for being here and being a part of this as well. How about you, Heidi? Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
I am everywhere at Heidi Angel with 2 L's, or HeidiAngelAuthor.com. Nope, sorry. I'm at HeidiAngel.com. Some of my social media is at Heidi Angel Author, but type in Heidi Angel, and if it's writing related, it's me.
Right on. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. As always, you're one of my great anchors, and I really appreciate it so much. Let's go ahead and Patrick, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
Well, my website is Patrick Hodges Author, all together, no underscores, .com. It's kind of undergoing a facelift right now, but it has links. It has most of my social media links in there. You can find me on Facebook under Patrick Hodges Author, and I also have a page for my first book, Joshua's Island. I'm on Twitter under Shrykespeare, SHRYKESPEARE. You can get hold of me any of those ways.
Very awesome. Thank you, sir, for being here. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Mr. Mulder, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
You can find me at SciFanMagazine.com. You can also find me now. My pen name is Alaric Elos. Now that's kind of a strange sounding name, but it's actually Greek, and I adopted it with a more gamey feel because my stories are they're in a game immersed world. So it's ALERIC-ELOS. So Alaric Elos, or Alaric-Elos.com.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Thank you for allowing us to be here to talk about your great society, your great magazine, and congratulations on 1 year, everybody. And I hope that the year 2, year 3, year 4, and beyond, we can all be sitting here talking more about it. And the next time around, maybe at one of the more, maybe couple conventions down the road, I will be all in person talking about it. I would love to do that. And if anybody is in the Utah area, definitely check this out. It's September 29th for the convention, and it'll be live, correct? You'll be broadcasting live on on the Facebook group as well, Richard?
Yep, that is correct. So that way everybody can participate.
There you go. And then there's a bunch of takeovers going on that day, and ML's having a party at her house with pizza, and more parties I'm sure will prop up across the country, and it'll be like the Super Bowl of science fiction and fantasy. So and with that I'm Joe Compton. You've been watching Go Indie Now. We do this once a month. Every third or fourth Friday of the month, we do a live panel, so come and join us again. Also, check out us at GoIndieNow.com. We have guest blogs and Q&As up right now from a bunch of artists, and on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/GoIndieNow. We have our This Week in Indies, which we do every Thursday. It's a news show that I put together. We have a great Netflix pick of the week from J.B. Taylor in there, and C. Pentecoff from A Novel Connection drops new releases onto her site every week as well. And we talk about everything and anything that is going on in the indie community. So come and check us out. And thank you so much for being here tonight. And remember, it's always time to go indie now, and we'll see you next time.